What's up, guys? Brett Okamoto, and it's that time of the week again. It is UFC Best Bets, and I'm particularly excited about this one. I'm not in Vegas. I am in Houston. I'm on the road again for the first time since the beginning of 2020. I want to say James is on the road with me. We are both in Houston, but we are in different hotel rooms, from the same city, but different hotel rooms. And Nick is back home in Vegas, Circus Sportsbook. Excited, guys, to talk about this pay-per-view. We talked about it a little bit when the line first came out, and so we're going to revisit it now. The lightweight title fight between Michael Chandler and Charles Oliveira. The line I'm seeing today, Oliveira small favorite, minus 130, Chandler plus 110. And I want to say, Nick, and you can tell me if I'm right on this. If I'm remembering correctly, when we spoke about this weeks ago, that was the line, right? I mean, has there been two-way action? Has there just been not much action on this fight? And is the line like essentially exactly what it was when it opened? Yeah,
it is. And I opened it exactly at minus 130 plus 110 at Circa. Now the market did open higher though. So there was immediate dog action on Chandler driving the line down. I believe it was as high as maybe minus 180-ish or so. So early on, market wide, the line was higher, but the action did come in on Chandler a little bit, and I undercut the market and was actually a scalp at the time that I opened the line to minus 130. And it paid off a little bit because I think the line's pretty stable right now and it's been steady. And we are receiving a lot of two-way action. There's going to be two-way sharp action on this fight like crazy. And then combined public opinion, obviously Chandler's flying under the radar a little bit. Oliveira is more of the household name in the UFC, so to speak, at this point. So this is an interesting fight. But even at the betting window, there's a lot of two-way action right now.
Super interesting. Before I get to James on the style matchup, it's interesting to me that Oliveira has more name recognition, even though he's been in the UFC and Chandler's been in Bellator for the last 10 years. And Oliveira has been with the UFC that entire time. I mean, I don't, off the top of my head, I'm not sure how many appearances he has in the UFC, but the guy has grown up in the UFC. I would have thought that public would have known Chandler more just because he was the champion the whole time. But you're telling me that the public, you actually expect them to go with Oliveira in this case.
I do think, because I think the UFC, has that power. I mean, Bellator, again, is a respectable promotion, no doubt about it, but it's not the UFC. So I think the UFC fans definitely recognize Oliveira more. They think of Chandler. I think part of me believes that they think of him, this guy from another promotion. He's okay, but I don't think he's legit competing in the UFC, because let's face it, a lot of people, if you're fighting outside of the UFC and you win a title in another promotion, they don't think it's as real. The number one belt in the world is a UFC title. That's what kind of crowns you the best in the world. If you win a belt outside of the promotion, that's great. I think that's fantastic, but you still don't get that kind of respect. So even though Chandler was a belt holder in Bellator, I still think that the respect factor for Oliveira amongst the UFC fans is a lot more, if that makes sense.
That's super interesting to me, because if you would have asked me, hey, if you like Oliveira, when should you bet him? I would have thought that the line would probably move in Chandler's favor as the fight gets closer and the public bets Chandler. But that's super interesting that you think it'll be Oliveira. All right, let's get to the style matchup, James. What do you see here between these two?
Man, stylistically, obviously both these guys are extremely dangerous, right? Like the danger factor in this is super high with Chandler's knockout power, and Oliveira's got a little pop as well, but he's mainly known to be a submission guy. When I say submission guy, he can finish submissions standing, on top, on bottom. So like that, for me, from a betting perspective, that kind of like makes me stay away from these fights typically, because the X factor is like, hey, this could end at any moment. But I'm going to play on this one, and we'll get into that here in a second. But stylistically, when I look at Oliveira, I mean, I look at him, he's dangerous everywhere. He's got good striking. And I feel like he's kind of had a cardio issue in the past that he is fixed. And maybe a little bit of a heart issue. Like, and I don't mean like his ability to endure pain and keep going. It seems like he's fixed that. You know what I mean? It seems like he's been in some dog fights and has done that. Has fixed those issues. But I look at him, he's got a complete game. I think he's extremely, extremely dangerous. Can attack from anywhere on subs, and that includes standing, which is very rare, right? But when I look at somebody like Michael Chandler, I mean, his ability to cover distance and explode in and out with that fast twitch muscle, he's got just one of the meanest right hands in the division. Stylistically, I think he's an extremely, extremely difficult matchup for Oliveira with a D1 level background, and also I think he's going to counter wrestle. If I'm Chandler, I counter wrestle this whole time. Like, you can't take me down and you're going to strike with me. And that's how I would approach this. If I'm Michael Chandler and his team, knowing those guys like I do, I'm going to almost bet anything that's what they're going to come out and do. And if that's the case, I really lean towards Chandler in this stylistically.
Specifically on because we all know the submissions that the Charles has. It's ridiculous. It's a very, very unique skill set. It's a very standout skill set that he has on the feet. James, based on like just me thinking back on Charles' fights, particularly recently when he's had a lot of success, he's just so aggressive, man. He is just constantly aggressive. How do you anticipate, like when this fight starts and it is on the feet and we see that forward motion and that aggressive, just that volume type style from Charles, what's this going to look like on the feet?
Yeah, so standing, the reason why Oliveira is so aggressive is because, I mean, you end up in the clinch. Okay, cool. You're going to take him down. I think he aggressively attacks striking to get people to shoot on him because he's got that nasty guillotine. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on who you're picking, I think that blueprint has kind of been laid, right? Like it's there. It's very apparent how he approaches his fights. And those guys at Sanford, I mean, Henry is one of the best coaches in the game, in my opinion. And I think those guys are going to be on it. I think they're going to be all over it. And what we're not talking about is, if you're coming forward, man, Chandler's not a guy that you can just walk into the pocket on. Like we're not talking about some guy that you can just aggressively walk down in this fight. Like Chandler's not that guy. Chandler can end the fight like that, right? He's got that eraser in both hands. He's got power in both hands. So I don't see Oliveira being able to bully him around the cage. Chandler's footwork is extremely good. His ability to cover distance is probably the best in the division. He just kind of like glides and he can just explode at any moment. I don't think that Oliveira is going to be able just to walk him down recklessly and not just get cracked. So I think the range is going to be different than you would typically see in an Oliveira fight, right? It's normally like right here, he's just walking you down. I don't think you're going to see that. I think you're going to see this really wide range from Chandler, similar to how he fought Hooker. It starts wide and then he'll close the gap. And then he's going to smash the pocket and look for big punches. And I don't think Oliveira is going to be able to take him down. That's where I see the biggest difference being is I just don't see it. Like, I mean, there's always a thing, right? And we're talking about a 25-minute fight. We talk about this every episode. 25 minutes is a long time. Yep. I just don't see how he gets Chandler down. I don't see it. I could be wrong, but I lean stylistically. I want to lean heavily towards Chandler in this.
Nick, do you?
And I can't believe he's an underdog. Like and I think this is just kind of what you guys were just talking about. This is just miseducation or lack of education. And I think the casual fan is betting Oliveira because he has name recognition behind this. But what people don't know is Chandler has been building a resume way out, outside of this. And he's been beating top tier competition for a long time. And not only been beating them, but really other than a couple guys has been dominating Bellator. You know what I mean? He's been dominating Bellator. So, and then come in to do what he did to Dan Hooker. Let's not forget about that. I mean, good Lord. Yeah. It's almost like we forgot about that. You know what I mean? And I know it's a different matchup.
No, that's a big that is a big point to bring up the Hooker fight, because I do think that there were some questions that some people had about how legit was he, how would he handle the UFC spotlight, and then he handled it so beautifully that you almost get that question gets put aside pretty quickly with what he did to a real guy against Dan Hooker. Nick, do you have the total in front of you, and do you have any thoughts on the total?
I do. It's 2.5 under 60 right now. In market wide, there's like 2.5 under 65. So you get the plus money on the over 2.5 rounds. I think it probably finishes under, to be honest with you. I think the line is about right because, I mean, 2.5 rounds means it's going to go obviously into the third round, and you got to kind of go over that halfway point in the third round to get the winner on the over. I mean, there's just so much firepower here. I don't think this fight hits the scorecards, that's for sure. But that 2.5 round spot, we could see it get around that mark. But I think it probably finishes in the first couple rounds, man. With Oliveira being as dangerous as he is, like you said, even on the feet, he's improving. I mean, he's definitely becoming more of a knockout artist on the feet, and then on the ground. I mean, from anywhere, like you said, on his back, on top position for sure. Even if he gets on your back, I mean, standing up, he could choke you out, right? He doesn't even need to get this fight to the floor. So he's ultra dangerous. I don't think he hits the scorecards. That's why if I was going to bet this over or under 2.5 rounds, I'd probably lean under 2.5 rounds. And then Chandler on the other side of it with that knockout power. And let's not forget, he's got some submission skill in his own right. And Oliveira, even though offensively he's really good getting the submission wins, defensively he is a bit submittable, if that makes sense. He's been subbed a few times throughout his career, which kind of is a head scratcher to me because he's so good on the ground. I wouldn't expect him to kind of fall into some of those traps. So Chandler's a very underrated grappler in this aspect too. I mean, I don't think he wants to dabble with Oliveira too much on the ground for sure, but he's got that knockout power. He's got a small chance at a sub. And then on the other side of it, what I just explained with Oliveira, it just all points to a finish in this fight.
Yeah. One last thing about the fight, and James, it's just so interesting because we never really this topic never gets brought up when we're talking about these fights. And that is that you said that you questioned his heart a little bit at one point in his career.
Yeah.
I think that's super interesting because, you know, when we're talking about these fights, we're never like, when you get to this level and you get to the very, very top of these weight classes, you're not seeing a lot of quit in any of these guys. But you have mentioned it. Michael Chandler has mentioned it in the buildup to this fight. And I just kind of want you to expand on that, man. What did you see out of Charles Oliveira? And as a fighter, knowing what that's like to be in there, does that ever go away if you do think there's a little quit in him?
Yeah, I mean, typically there's a saying, this once a quitter, always a quitter, right? Like, and I feel like there's different types of quit, right? And there's blatant quit, which like we see somebody would just be like, I don't want to fight anymore, right? It's like, I'm not hurt, I just can't, I don't want to continue to do this. And then there's quit, like where you quit in positions that you know you have to win, right? Like, you know, like if you're, I don't know, if you're on the fence and you're on one knees down, you're like, I got to step up to win this and get back to my feet. And you just say, nah, I'm too tired. Like that's quitting too, right? There's multiple forms of quitting. So, but what I've seen in Oliveira in the past is like, he's flat out quit. You know what I mean? Like, here's my neck, take it. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that's kind of what Nick was talking about is like, I don't think these guys are better than him, you know, in jiu-jitsu. I think he's getting popped one or two times and like that neck starts to come up. And he's like, oh, I got caught. You know, I've seen that in the past, man. I do this every weekend and I've seen that. I haven't seen that from him in a long time. I will say that. And typically what happens whenever you see that and then it kind of goes away is I always lean to like cardio issues because cardio will create cowards of men, right? Like, so if you're tired, it's a lot easier to quit if you're tired. So what I'm saying is maybe he's revamped his strength and conditioning or his cardio is much better than it used to be. And he doesn't have to go to that dark place mentally. Right. And, but Chandler's the guy that can bring that out, man. Like the wrestlers don't tend to have that because they're in a room that they just grind all day, every day, you know, and they're used to enduring that pain. And, you know, we're talking about a guy that's been competing at a very high level, not just in MMA, but in wrestling his whole life, you know. And jiu-jitsu is just a little bit different of a sport. You can technique people and I don't feel like that quit quite comes out in that sport like it does in wrestling, you know? So, this may be nothing, you know, I may be talking out,
Sure.
You know, but man,
It's
I have
something.
seen it in the past and it's there, it's real.
He's burned me myself. He's burned me, sorry, in the past.
Yeah, when enough people in the sport have mentioned it, then there's got to be a little bit of something to it. I mean, I would say personally, you know, you talk about, well, it went away. I kind of felt like it went away when he went to 155. And so maybe the weight cut had something to do with it.
100%. And that just falls in the cardio department, right? Like, cause the weight cut's bad. So it takes a toll on your cardio. So you get tired quicker, right? So we're all saying the same things essentially here.
Yep. Well, it's super interesting lightweight title fight, obviously. Let's go to the next lightweight fight. It's not for a title, obviously, co-main event. It's Beneil Dariush versus Tony Ferguson. Also super fascinating to me just because you got Tony Ferguson, of course, who went from the extremes. You know, he was right there and looking like maybe the best lightweight in the world, was going to fight Khabib last year. And then all of a sudden, two really bad losses, like not just losses. And granted, they were two great competition, Charles Oliveira and Justin Gaethje. But Tony Ferguson did not look like the guy that he had been for that 12-fight win streak. So new year for Tony Ferguson. He is coming into this one as a plus 145 underdog. Minus 165 for Beneil Dariush, who has not really had, I don't think that, I mean, heck, he's kind of had close to signature wins, but nothing like this would be. So let's start with James. How do you see this matchup? And what do you think just about in terms of where Tony Ferguson is in his career?
I'm kind of I don't say I'm all over the place with this because I'm not all over the place with it. After Tony fought Justin Gaethje, I said to myself, like, that guy will never be the same again. And I love Tony Ferguson. I've been a fan of his for a long time. But that fighting will change people. You know what I mean? Like when you're in fights like that, it changes you. Look at Rory McDonald, Robbie Lawler. Look at Condit Lawler. Like, don't tell me Lawler was the same after those fights. Don't tell me Rory McDonald was the same after that fight. Don't tell me Carlos Condit was the same after that fight. Don't tell me Tony Ferguson was the same after that fight. Like, there are fights that change you. And I feel like that was one for Tony Ferguson. He's not getting any younger. And the blueprint has kind of been laid on how to beat him. And I do feel like Dariush has the tools to beat him. He can strike well. He can wrestle well. He's got good cardio. He's got extremely good jiu-jitsu. I think the jiu-jitsu will cancel each other out. But I give the advantage to striking to Dariush. I give the wrestling advantage to Dariush. And I give the cardio advantage to Tony. But it's not a big difference. You know what I mean? Where Tony beats people is he's going to overwhelm them. You know, he overwhelms them with punches and volume. And Dariush has been in there with top tier athletes. He trains at a great camp under Rafael Cordero at Kings MMA. Like I know he's seeing this. You know what I mean? Like I like Dariush in this fight. I don't think Tony's ever been the same since that Gaethje fight. And I said that when it happened, and I just got to stand by that. I love Tony Ferguson. I haven't seen anything that's going to lead me to believe that things are going to be different this time around.
And I think that's really the question, right, Nick? Because, not saying that this line would be drastically different, but hey, I mean, if this fight had happened at the beginning of last year, when Tony was still on a 12-fight win streak, I mean, he's minus what? Minus 200s? If
mid 200s, I would think that's fair, man. Yeah, like minus 250ish, 240ish, 250ish. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so you're talking about he'd be a minus 250, let's say, favorite, and now fast forward 1 year and he's plus 145. And I think that the question is, if you're going to bet this fight, is where do you think Tony Ferguson is? Did something fundamentally change? Was it the Gaethje fight, the damage that he took? Was it something else? If you don't think anything has crazy changed with Tony Ferguson, well, then you're probably looking at this line thinking that it's great value, right? I mean, how are you looking at this line?
Absolutely, you're right. And I think there is a lot of that going on right now. A lot of people think, look, Ferguson fought 2 top-tier guys. He's not done. A lot of people are thinking he is. Let's take advantage of the value. So we've seen a lot of decent action coming in on Ferguson, but now we're starting to see some sharp action come in back on Dariush. So this is another spot. Both the championship fight and this fight here, the co-main event, is getting two-way sharp action. So there's a lot of sharp opinion coming in on both sides. And of course, the betting public is going to side, I think, with the dog with Ferguson. If you see a dog price next to that name and the respect factor that he does get, more public action is going to be on Ferguson. But the sharps are not hesitating a little bit more, laying the juice. So we're getting more out of the two. Obviously, I just said there's two-way sharp action, but a little bit more now is coming in towards Dariush, and the line's rising, even though we have a lot of money on Ferguson, if that makes sense. So a lot of times the public doesn't realize how the line system works. You could be heavier on the underdog, but have more sharp action on the favorite, and you're going to kind of side that way. So despite having more action on the dog, the line might rise, if that makes sense, right? Because you don't want to get more sharp action on the right side. That should be the right side, at least. We'll see how the fight plays out. But yeah, at the betting window, it's interesting because there's a lot of action on this one as well.
Do you think the line continues to go up, or do you think it's about as high as it'll be?
I could see it maybe reaching around minus 185, minus 190, but then I think we'll see some sharp action kind of buy back out a little bit because of depending on what price you got. If you got Ferguson as low as minus 140, minus 150, or I'm sorry, the other side, Dariush minus 140, 150, then you're gobbling up plus 155 on Ferguson. You got a free roll. So I think we're going to see a lot of people that are taking advantage of the scalp opportunity with the line movement and coming back and buying out of it. So it'll probably drop back down. I think minus 170 is about right. I think we'll see it probably settle somewhere around there.
James, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Is Beneil Dariush an elite lightweight? Is he in that category, or is he that next tier? Is he not quite within those top guys?
I think he's right below it. I really like what he's doing. I think he's very well rounded. I think he has all the tools necessary to be in that elite group. However, I have not seen a performance from him yet that would lead me to say, yes, you are in that group. Mm-hmm. This is his shot though, right? Like this is the fight that could be there. He had some problems with Drakkar Klose. He's had some issues, and he's a little hittable at times, but he finds ways to win. And I really like that. To me, he's right on the cusp of that. A win over Tony, I think, would put him in that category, and especially if he impressively wins, right? Because that's really what we're talking about with Oliveira, right? Like Oliveira was like, man, he's really good, and then he just smashed Tony, and then it's like, okay, like this dude's really good. He is in the elite, right? And I just think Dariush is in the same spot. It's like, okay, man, like you're really good, but a win here would be like, all right, you're the elite.
Nick, let me ask you one kind of random question here to wrap up all this lightweight talk. Based on the odds, and this is a fantasy type thing, obviously, but who would odds makers say is the best lightweight in the world right now? That Khabib has retired. From an odds standpoint, who is the best lightweight in the world?
Probably Poirier. I mean, I think that he probably puts himself in the number one spot amongst, I think, the sharps right now and across the board with the public opinion and, the smarter bettors out there as well. I think Poirier, but it's close. If Chandler could come in here and win that fight, he puts himself right in the mix already, just, with a few UFC fights. So it's tough. A lot of respect on Oliveira. If he does get the win over Chandler, I think that propels him maybe on top of Poirier. So this fight with Chandler Oliveira could solidify who truly is the number one guy in the world for sure.
I think Gaethje's right in that conversation as well, right?
Yeah, for sure. Because Gaethje could come out there and just knock any of these guys out, so to speak, right? So he could definitely steal that number 1 spot. But he's right there. I mean, so it's a tiger, like it's a Shark Tank right now with all these guys being just amazing fighters, right? Outside of Khabib retiring, there's a great opportunity to solidify that. So I don't think there's a clear number 1, but I think it's still Poirier right now based on his performances as of late in the Poirier or in the Conor McGregor fight as well.
I gotta tell you, if there is and I agree with you, Nick. But if there was one name that gives me pause, if Poirier were fighting Islam Makhachev, who's favored in that fight?
Ooh, man, Makhachev probably. Well,
I
maybe
think
not according to the public, but I would say because I mean stylistically, it's a tough matchup. If he doesn't
by the odds, Makhachev is actually, if you're just going by who would be favored over everybody in the division, it's actually Islam, which is insane.
You're right. He's the dark horse for sure, and nobody's talking about him. So that was really smart of you to bring up because I think he can just stylistically he could control a lot of these guys, right? He can get the takedown, he can grind them out. He's improving on the feet, so he's no slouch on the feet either. So yeah, I mean stylistically, he can give all these guys some trouble. He could be the next Khabib, so to speak, in that division.
Crazy. I think we're going to be talking about Islam a lot, in the coming year on this show. So let's great conversation on the main and co-main. Let's get into the best bets. Nick, let's start with you. What do you got this weekend?
I'm going to have to ride with Chandler in the dog price, man. I mean, again, I know Oliveira's a finisher, so I'm a little bit concerned that maybe he goes out there and catches Chandler and hops on a submission because he's that dangerous. But it's all about pricing, and the pricing says to me you have to bet Chandler at dog price. I mean, people just don't realize how good this guy really is. So I think the opportunity is there for him to come in and grab that UFC title and get that respect. I agree with everything that James said about this fight, so I am riding with the plus 110 dog odds on Michael Chandler.
Yeah. Last week we had competing best bets, and Nick owes my man James a lunch next time he's in Vegas. Do we have competing best bets again this week? Are you on the Oliveira side or what? Who do you best?
I got to tell you, man, I really hate agreeing with Nick, but I'm gonna rock with Chandler this week as well. But Chandler would be my best bet. I really think stylistically he's just a very, very difficult matchup for Oliveira. I got to say this though, I'm nervous about this week. This week there's a lot of tight fights. There's not one fight that I was like, that's the one. So it's like I literally just made my pick like 20 minutes before we got on. So I'm nervous about this week. My streak is on the line here. I'm getting a little antsy.
I think you're trying to get to double digits here. I think you've had like 9.
We're getting close. I'm gonna rock with Chandler. Right. But since Nick already picked Chandler, I'm gonna give people another pick, and then I'm just gonna go with my girl Gina Mazzani. I think she's looked really good in the gym. She's since moving over to our camp, she's done excellent. I think she's a really tough matchup for Koshera, who she's fighting. This girl tends to have a problem with good grapplers, good wrestlers, good cardio, and that's exactly what Gina is. I feel pretty good about us getting a victory on Saturday.
I love it, man. Good talk as always, guys. For those of you watching, thank you for watching. Hit the subscribe button to the ESPN Bets channel for us, and make some money this weekend. We'll see you back here next week. Take care.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN Plus right now.